The pink combat knife clattered onto the metal deck of the USS Nimitz, with a sharp ping that cut through the tense silence. Commander Sophia Chen, 32, and dressed in her custom rose-colored tactical gear, froze as the specially modified weapon skidded across the floor, stopping at the polished boots of Master Chief Petersen. Every eye in the briefing room turned toward her, a collective weight of judgment and dismissal pressing down on her shoulders. Across the room, Lieutenant Wells smirked, his voice cutting through the humid Pacific air like a blade. "I thought DEVGRU wanted their best tactical specialist, not someone playing dress-up." The room fell silent as Sophia's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Nobody defended her. Nobody even looked her way. What they didn't know was that beneath her unconventional appearance, Sophia carried a secret that could change everything if she dared to reveal it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Captain James Harrison emerged from the command center, sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's industrial-strength air conditioning. "Lieutenant Wells, I apologize. Let me get Rodriguez to handle this personally." "Your mission brief promised elite specialists," Wells growled, his SEAL Team 6 colleagues forming an intimidating semicircle behind him. "Instead, I see amateurs and quota fillers." The words struck Sophia like physical blows, not because of her gender, but because they assumed she was there to fill diversity numbers rather than for her skills. She had heard similar dismissals countless times over her decade in naval special warfare, but today something felt different. "I can handle it," Sophia said quietly. The briefing room fell silent. She had never volunteered for high-profile missions, never challenged the established hierarchy. Her voice, barely above a whisper, somehow carried more weight than Wells' booming commands. Rodriguez, the team's regular tactical specialist, stepped forward with theatrical disgust. "Look at this," he said, pointing to her equipment. "She's using pink anodized gear. Probably watched too many action movies this morning." Carter, another SEAL, laughed sharply, the sound bouncing off the metal bulkheads. "My daughter plays with toy soldiers too. Maybe they could have a playdate." Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she retrieved her knife. These weren't ordinary hands, they bore scars from years of precision work. Her fingernails were kept short by necessity, not vanity. But she had learned to hide her capabilities, to appear less formidable than she truly was. Survival in the male-dominated world of special operations required strategic invisibility. "The infiltration parameters you've outlined won't work," she continued, her voice steady despite the mockery. "Your approach angle is wrong. It's exposing your team to unnecessary surveillance risk for at least 40 seconds. Wells stopped mid-insult. That level of tactical precision required either extraordinary luck or genuine expertise. "She memorized that from the manual," Rodriguez insisted. "Anyone can quote procedures." "Then let anyone fix your infiltration plan," Sophia replied, meeting Wells' skeptical gaze. "But when your team gets compromised during the mission, remember you had the chance to prevent it." Captain Harrison grabbed her arm, not roughly but firmly. Fear rather than anger radiated from him. He needed this joint operation to succeed. Offending SEAL Team 6 meant professional suicide for a career officer. "Commander Chen, return to your station now." She looked at her superior officer, seeing the desperation in his eyes, the same desperation that had driven her to accept this support role 5 years ago when her true specialization was buried under redacted files and classified operations. "The current approach will trigger the compound's perimeter sensors," she told Wells directly. "You have maybe 15 minutes to revise your insertion plan before the mission becomes compromised. Your choice." The satellite imagery on the briefing room screen flickered, revealing exactly the vulnerability she had identified. Wells whistled low. He had seen that particular security configuration before, always followed by failed missions or casualties. But admitting Sophia's expertise meant acknowledging 5 years of dismissing her contributions based on appearances. As Sophia retreated to the cramped Tactical Operations Center, her hands shook. 5 years of silence. 5 years of accepting humiliation with grace. 5 years of pretending to be less capable to avoid conflict. All of it was crashing down because she couldn't watch precision operators walk into danger due to human prejudice. Her secure phone buzzed with a message. From Langley, a contact number she hadn't seen in years. She deleted it without reading, but the damage was done. Memories she had buried deep began clawing their way to the surface. Little did she know that the deleted message contained information that would change everything. In her locker, beneath standard issue gear and a weathered canteen, lay her personal kit specialized equipment that cost more than most officers' annual salaries. She'd brought it from her previous life at the agency, unable to abandon tools that felt like extensions of her soul. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Wrapped in tactical cloth was a photograph. Sophia standing beside her mother at her Naval Academy graduation, pride radiating from every angle. Her mother's handwriting on the back remained legible despite years of handling. My daughter, never let anyone define who you are. Courage speaks louder than words. Outside, she heard the mission planning continuing. Wells shouting orders while Rodriguez and the others fumbled with tactical assessments they didn't fully comprehend. The situation deteriorated, satellite imagery showing increased security. At the target location, Sophia closed her locker, photograph still in hand. Her mother wouldn't recognize the woman she had become, hiding talent to avoid conflict, accepting disrespect to maintain peace. But perhaps it wasn't too late. Perhaps respect could be reclaimed not through confrontation, but through undeniable demonstration of skill. The mission parameters changed again, the infiltration window narrowing dangerously. Sophia made her decision. 3 days later, tension aboard the USS Nimitz had thickened like congealed blood. Sophia arrived at the pre-mission briefing early, as always, but found the command center buzzing with an energy that made her stomach clench. Word had spread about the planning incident, and not in her favor. "Morning, Chen," Rodriguez called out, but his usual casual tone carried an edge. Carter nodded tersely from behind the weapons locker. Only Specialist Jackson offered his customary warm smile, though even he seemed more cautious than usual. Captain Harrison emerged from the command center, clipboard in hand, his expression unreadable. "Commander Chen, we need to talk." Her heart sank. The private conversation she had been dreading was finally here. "Look," Harrison began once they were alone in his cramped office, surrounded by mission reports and faded military commendations. "That incident with the SEAL team, it's got people talking. Senior officers are asking questions." "What kind of questions?" Harrison paused, searching for diplomatic words. "About whether we're running a professional tactical unit or some kind of training program for inexperienced specialists." The words stung because they were so far from the truth. Sophia had been analyzing tactical operations since she could read a topographical map, had graduated with honors in advanced strategic operations, had once led a specialized infiltration unit for the most classified agency operations. But here, on the carrier, her resume began and ended with support functions and equipment maintenance. "I identified a fatal flaw in their plan," she said quietly. "The approach is sound now." "That's not the point." Harrison's voice carried a frustration that wasn't entirely directed at her. "This is a joint operation, Sophia. People talk. Admiral Westfield heard from his counterpart that you embarrassed SEAL Team 6, made them look foolish. I did my job. Your job is what I say it is." The words came out harsher than Harrison intended. He softened slightly, but the damage was done. "Look, I like you. You're reliable, disciplined, and you don't cause trouble. But I've got a career to protect. These joint operations keep us funded." Sophia understood the unspoken message. Stay invisible or find another assignment. In the specialized world of naval special warfare support, there weren't many options. For a woman whose files were redacted. "I understand," she said, though the words tasted like metal in her mouth. "Good. I'm glad we're on the same page." Harrison stood, signaling the conversation was over. "Oh, and Commander Lieutenant Wells is requesting a final equipment inspection this afternoon. I want Rodriguez handling it personally." As Sophia returned to the tactical center, she caught fragments of conversation that stopped abruptly when she appeared. Words like overstepping and showing off floated through the recycled air like toxins. She had heard them before, in different contexts, on different missions, but they always carried the same message: know your place. Jackson approached her station as she began inventory on mission-critical communication equipment. "You okay, Chun?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. Jackson was the only one who had ever called her by her first name, the only one who seemed to see past the surface assumptions that defined her in this place. "That was impressive the other day," he said quietly, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "I've been planning insertions for 12 years, and I've never seen anyone spot a security vulnerability that fast." "Just lucky," Sophia deflected, but Jackson shook his head. "Nah, that wasn't luck. That was skill, real skill." He paused, studying her face. "Where did you learn to analyze operations like that?" The question hung in the air between them. Sophia had been waiting 5 years for someone to ask, to show genuine curiosity about her background. But now that the moment had arrived, she found herself paralyzed by the weight of classification. "Around," she said finally. "You pick things up." Jackson nodded, accepting her evasion with grace. "Well, whoever trained you knew what they were doing. That infiltration plan is solid now." As if summoned by their conversation, the heavy footfalls of tactical boots filled the corridor. Through the doorway, Sophia saw Lieutenant Wells approaching with his 3 team members. Her stomach twisted as she recognized the set of his shoulders, the aggressive swagger that had intimidated her before. "Rodriguez," Captain Harrison called out, but his voice cracked with nervous energy. "Your VIP is here." Wells strode into the tactical center like he owned it, his gaze sweeping over the various workstations before settling on Sophia. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and she saw something there that hadn't been present during their first encounter: uncertainty. "Captain Harrison," Wells said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I need to speak with whoever identified the perimeter sensor issue." "That would be Rodriguez," Harrison replied quickly, gesturing toward the senior specialist. "He's our most experienced." "No." Wells' interruption was sharp. "I need to speak with her." He pointed directly at Sophia, the woman who spotted the vulnerability. The room fell silent again, but this time the quiet felt different, expectant, dangerous. Sophia set down her equipment and walked toward the group, her heart pounding but her step steady. She had learned long ago that showing fear only invited more predators. "You wanted to see me?" she asked, her voice calm despite the chaos in her chest. Wells studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "We've been running simulations for 3 days now, testing your alternate approach, smooth as silk. Better results than we've had in months." "Good," Sophia replied, unsure where this was leading. "The thing is," Wells continued, "I've been thinking about what you said regarding the security system configuration, about the sensor overlap patterns." He paused. "That's not common knowledge. That's specialized information." Sophia remained silent, waiting. "So I made some calls, talked to some people." Wells' voice grew quieter, more intense. "People who know about advanced tactical systems, specialized insertion protocols. The kind of technology that's not exactly available to your average naval support specialist. The blood drained from Sophia's face. She had been so focused on protecting the mission that she hadn't considered the implications of revealing her knowledge. In her old life, such expertise would have been expected, even celebrated. Here, it made her dangerous. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but even to her own ears, the denial sounded weak. Wells smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We'll see about that." What Wells had discovered would shatter the carefully constructed life Sophia had built and force her to confront a past she'd tried desperately to escape. As the SEALs left the tactical center, Sophia felt the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation, every sideways glance. She had tried so hard to remain invisible, to blend into the background of the carrier's operational landscape. But now, like it or not, she was very much visible. And visibility, she knew from bitter experience, was the first step toward destruction. The following week brought a tropical storm that seemed to mirror Sophia's internal turbulence. She arrived at her station each morning to find the atmosphere growing increasingly hostile. Officers who had once nodded politely now avoided eye contact. Her teammates' conversations died when she entered the room. Even the equipment technicians treated her with newfound suspicion. Captain Harrison called her into his office on Thursday afternoon, his face grave. "I've got a problem, Sophia," he began without preamble. "A big one." She sat in the worn chair across from his desk, noting how he couldn't quite meet her eyes. "Lieutenant Wells has been asking questions about you. About your background, about where you learned to analyze tactical systems with that level of expertise." Harrison's voice carried a tremor she'd never heard before. "He's got people looking into your service record." Sophia's mouth went dry. "What kind of people?" "The kind that don't take mind-your-own-business for an answer." Harrison finally looked at her directly. "Commander, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Is there anything in your past that could compromise this carrier group? Anything at all?" The question hung between them like a loaded weapon. Sophia thought about her life before the Navy, the classified operations, the deep cover assignments, the incident in Kandahar that had destroyed everything she'd built, the NDAs she'd signed, the debriefings that had bought her silence in exchange for a chance to disappear. "Everyone has a past, Captain. That's not an answer." His voice hardened. "I've got a carrier group to protect and a command that'll outlive my career. This unit is all I have. If there's something you're hiding, I'm not hiding anything." "Illegal," Sophia interrupted. "I've never been charged with anything, never violated operational security." She sighed, knowing that partial truth was better than outright lies. "I used to work for an intelligence agency. It didn't end well. I came here for a fresh start." Harrison leaned back in his chair, processing this information. "What kind of work?" "Tactical, infiltration, the kind of work that doesn't exist in standard mission reports." "Jesus, Sophia." Harrison rubbed his temples. "Why didn't you tell me this before? Why take a job as a basic tactical specialist when you could have been leading operations?" "Because sometimes you need to disappear. Sometimes starting over means starting at the bottom." Before Harrison could respond, the tactical center's alarm chimed. Through the office window, Sophia saw a helicopter land on the carrier deck. 2 men in civilian clothes emerged, their movements precise and professional. Government, she realized with a sinking heart. Or worse, agency security. Captain Harrison. The taller of the 2 men approached the office. "I'm Agent Donovan, Central Intelligence Agency. This is Agent Walsh. We'd like to speak with one of your officers." Harrison closed his eyes, knowing that his carefully managed unit was about to be disrupted. "Which officer?" he asked, though his glance toward Sophia made the answer obvious. "Commander Sophia Chen. We understand she recently consulted on a joint operation with SEAL Team 6. The secret Sophia had protected for 5 years was about to explode into the open, and with it, the truth about who she really was. The next hour unfolded like a slow-motion firefight. The agents were polite but thorough, asking questions about her qualifications, her tactical assessments, her knowledge of specialized infiltration protocols. Sophia answered carefully, sticking to facts while revealing as little as possible about her former life. "Commander Chen," Agent Donovan said finally, "our preliminary investigation suggests you have expertise that's unusual for someone in your current position. We're not accusing you of anything, but we need to understand how a Navy tactical specialist knows classified information about agency infiltration methods." "I don't know any classified information," Sophia replied honestly. "I assessed a common vulnerability using publicly available tactical knowledge." "The perimeter sensor configuration you identified isn't common knowledge," Agent Walsh interjected. "It's a known vulnerability in that particular system, but it's not something that would be obvious to most military personnel." Sophia felt trapped. Admitting her true background would invite scrutiny she couldn't afford, but continuing to deny her expertise would only make her look more suspicious. "I read a lot," she said lamely. "Field manuals, tactical journals. I stay current with security. Technology." The agents exchanged glances. Agent Donovan pulled out a tablet, scrolling through what appeared to be a lengthy document. "According to our records, Commander Sophia Chen has been employed with Naval Special Warfare Support for 5 years. Before that, there's very little documentation of your service record. Significant portions are redacted or classified. That's unusual even for special operations." Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. She had been so careful to build her new identity slowly, avoiding the kind of digital trail that would connect her to her former life. But apparently, that very caution had made her suspicious. "I value my privacy," she said. "Privacy is one thing," Agent Walsh replied, "but this level of operational security requires significant effort. Almost like someone trying to hide from something." Captain Harrison looked back and forth between Sophia and the agents, his face pale. "We're not questioning her work ethic, Captain," Agent Donovan said. "We're trying to understand how she acquired knowledge that should be limited to agency tactical specialists and black operations personnel." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Sophia realized that her attempt to remain invisible had backfired spectacularly. By trying to hide her qualifications, she had only made herself more interesting to people who investigated anomalies for a living. "I think," she said quietly, "I need to make a phone call." The agents nodded. "We'll wait." Sophia stepped outside the carrier's island structure, her hands shaking as she scrolled through her contacts. She found the number she'd been avoiding for 5 years and pressed call. "Director Blackwood's office," came the crisp, professional voice. "I need to speak with Director Blackwood. Tell him it's Sophia. Tell him it's about Operation Kingfisher." While she waited for her former commander to come on the line, Sophia watched through the windows as Rodriguez, Carter, and Jackson pretended to work while obviously straining to hear the conversation with the federal agents. Harrison sat slumped in his chair, probably calculating how much a CIA investigation would cost his career. "Sophia." Director Blackwood's voice was cautious but not unfriendly. "I haven't heard from you in 5 years. "I know, sir. I need help. Agency representatives are asking questions about my background, and I can't tell them the truth without violating security protocols." "Slow down. What kind of agents?" "Donovan and Walsh. They're investigating me because I spotted a security vulnerability during the joint operation briefing." A long pause. "Sophia, the Kingfisher operation was declassified last month. You're free to discuss your background now. In fact, you should know that the Kandahar incident has been reassessed. New evidence has come to light." Sophia's knees nearly buckled. What kind of evidence? The kind that proves you were right all along. The kind that's going to make some very powerful people very uncomfortable. As she ended the call, Sophia realized that her quiet life in naval support was over. The past she'd tried so hard to escape was about to collide with the present she'd built, and she wasn't sure either would survive the impact. She walked back into the office, straightening her shoulders. If her anonymity was gone, then perhaps it was time to stop hiding. "Gentlemen," she said to the agents, "I think it's time we had a more detailed conversation." The briefing room aboard the USS Nimitz had seen thousands of mission plans, but never a debriefing quite like this one. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the scarred table where Sophia sat facing Agents Donovan and Walsh. Captain Harrison fidgeted in his chair beside her, his face pale with worry about what revelations might destroy his career. "Before we begin," Agent Donovan said, setting a digital recorder on the table, "I want to be clear that you're not under arrest or suspicion of wrongdoing. However, given the nature of the operations involved, we need to understand exactly who we're dealing with." Sophia nodded, her hands folded calmly in her lap. After 5 years of hiding, the prospect of telling the truth felt both terrifying and liberating. "My name is Sophia Chen, but until 5 years ago, I was known by a different operational designation. Until the Kandahar incident, I was Ghost 6, Primary Tactical Specialist for CIA Special Activities Division's Omega Team." Harrison's jaw dropped. Agent Walsh leaned forward, suddenly more interested. "Ghost 6, Agent Donovan repeated, consulting his tablet. "I see, that explains a great deal. You know who she is?" Harrison asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Commander." Chun led 17 high-risk infiltrations by age 30, Agent Walsh explained. "She designed the tactical approach for Operation Sandstorm that's still taught at the farm. Her work on perimeter security assessment literally wrote the current manual for covert insertion techniques." Sophia felt a strange mix of pride and pain hearing her accomplishments recited like a resume. "That was a long time ago." "Not that long," Agent Donovan interjected. "Your methodologies are still being used. Your perimeter sensor vulnerability assessment is literally the same approach you recognized in the SEAL team's briefing. That's how you knew exactly what was wrong. You wrote the protocols." Harrison stared at Sophia as if seeing her for the first time. "You're that Ghost 6? The one who infiltrated the Beijing embassy during the crisis. I remember reading about that operation in classified briefings." "That was before everything fell apart," Sophia said quietly. "What happened?" Agent Walsh asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Sophia took a deep breath and began the story she'd never told anyone in the Navy. She spoke about Operation Kingfisher, the mission in Kandahar where her tactical assessment had been overruled by Commander Victor Hayes, her former team leader, who had ignored her warnings about civilian presence. About the disastrous firefight that followed, the casualties that should never have happened. About her father's death from stress-induced heart failure during the subsequent inquiry, and the classified agreement that had effectively banned her from operational roles. "The legal hearings consumed everything," she continued. "I lost my reputation, my career, my identity. The settlement included a non-disclosure agreement that prevented me from discussing the operation or claiming I had been right. I was also reassigned to non-operational duties for 5 years. That reassignment ended last month," Agent Donovan observed. "Yes, but by then I'd built a different life. I thought I could stay hidden." Harrison found his voice. "Hidden? You've been serving on my carrier for 5 years, and you never thought to mention that you're one of the most brilliant tactical specialists in the intelligence community. Would you have hired me if I told you I was a disgraced former operator with a history of challenging command decisions? Or would you have assumed I was trouble?" Harrison fell silent, knowing she was right. Agent Donovan closed his tablet. Commander Chen, we need to discuss your current situation. Operation Kingfisher has been declassified and reassessed based on satellite imagery that corroborates your original assessment. The Senate Intelligence Committee has been building a case against Commander Hayes for falsifying mission reports. Sophia's heart skipped. What kind of evidence? Drone footage recovered from archive data. Communications records. Operational timestamps that prove you identified the civilian presence before the engagement was authorized. The evidence is comprehensive. More importantly, Agent Walsh added, the agency wants to discuss reinstating your operational status. Your expertise is needed for several classified missions. The words hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. Sophia felt tears threatening, but she blinked them back. There's something else, Agent Donovan continued. Lieutenant Wells' inquiry wasn't just about security concerns. He was impressed by your work. He's been advocating for your involvement in an upcoming joint operation, arguing that the military needs tactical specialists who can identify vulnerabilities that others miss. Wells defended me? Sophia asked, surprised. He said, and I quote, anyone who can spot a perimeter vulnerability with standard equipment while being harassed by a bunch of arrogant SEALs is exactly the kind of person we need planning our infiltrations. Harrison shook his head in amazement. 5 years. You've been here 5 years, and I had you running communications checks while you could have been designing operation plans that save lives. I wasn't ready for that life again, Sophia admitted. I needed time to heal, to figure out who I was without the agency defining me. And now? Agent Walsh asked. Sophia looked around the stark briefing room, thinking about the tactical center where she'd spent 5 years rebuilding not just operations plans but herself. She thought about Jackson, the only person who had consistently treated her with respect. About the satisfaction of working with her hands, of solving problems without politics or agency intrigue. Now I know exactly who I am, she said firmly. I'm a tactical specialist who's learned the value of caution. I'm someone who can work in the field and in the command center. I'm a woman who won't be defined by other people's expectations or limitations. She paused, meeting each man's gaze. I'm ready to reclaim my life. But Sophia's journey back from exile would prove more challenging than anyone imagined, and would require her make choices that could change everything once again. Agent Walsh smiled. Then let's talk about your future. The agency has several operations that could use your expertise, and with your experience in both tactical planning and field operations, you'd be invaluable. What about my current assignment? Harrison asked. Won't Naval Intelligence want her back? Naval Intelligence has extended multiple offers, Agent Donovan replied. Full reinstatement, back pay, control of her own tactical unit. They're desperate to rehabilitate their approach after the Hayes scandal. Sophia considered this. And Commander Hayes? He'll be court-martialed within the week. Charges of falsifying reports, dereliction of duty, and negligent homicide. He's looking at significant prison time. For 5 years, Sophia had dreamed of this moment: vindication, justice, recognition of the truth. But now that it had arrived, she felt strangely detached from the desire for revenge. I want to think about it, she said finally. All of it, the agency, naval intelligence, everything. I've been making decisions based on fear for too long. I want to make this choice from a position of strength. Of course, Agent Donovan sighed, standing. Take your time, but Commander Chen, Sophia, don't take too long. The intelligence community needs operators like you. The country needs people who can identify threats under pressure. As the agents gathered their materials, Harrison turned to Sophia with a mixture of awe and regret. I owe you an apology, he said. I should have recognized your talent. You gave me work when I needed it, Sophia interrupted. You gave me a place to heal. That's not something to apologize for. What happens now? To the tactical unit. I mean, Sophia smiled, the first genuine smile she'd worn in days. Now you promote better officers. You elevate Jackson to senior tactical specialist. He's got excellent instincts. And you remember that talent comes in all forms, not just the ones you expect. As they left the briefing room, Sophia felt the weight of 5 years of secrecy lifting from her shoulders. The truth was finally out, and she was still standing. More than that, she was ready to reclaim her true identity. The walk back to the tactical center was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Harrison seemed lost in thought, probably reconsidering every assumption he'd made about his personnel. Sophia watched the familiar corridors of the carrier roll past, knowing that everything had changed in the span of a few hours. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Commander Chen, this is Lieutenant Wells. Heard the news. Outstanding work spotting that vulnerability. Hope you'll consider joining the task force. The country needs tactical specialists who can think under fire. Semper Fi." Sophia smiled, tucking the phone away. For the first time in 5 years, her future felt wide open with possibilities. The question now wasn't whether she was qualified for the opportunities being offered. It was which one would let her make the biggest difference. The news spread through the USS Nimitz like wildfire within hours of the CIA agent's visit. Everyone on the carrier knew that the quiet tactical specialist with the pink gear was actually a legendary operative who had been living in hiding. The story had everything a military vessel loved: mystery, government intrigue, and the dramatic revelation that the woman they'd all underestimated was actually a tactical genius. Sophia arrived at her station the next morning to find a crowd gathered outside the tactical center. Officers from every department occupied the corridor, their curious faces turning toward her as she approached. Whispers followed her like shadows as she tried to reach the door. "Commander Chen, is it true you were Ghost 6? Were you really behind the Beijing operation? How many infiltrations did you lead in Pakistan?" Sophia pushed through the crowd without comment, but inside the tactical center she found even more chaos. The comms system buzzed incessantly with calls from intelligence officers, former colleagues, and senior military officials. Rodriguez and Carter stood near the coffee machine, their faces mixing curiosity with something that looked like shame. "Morning, Ghost 6, Rodriguez said awkwardly, emphasizing her former call sign. "It's still Sophia," she replied, pulling on her standard issue tactical vest over her customized pink undershirt. "Nothing's changed." "Everything's changed," Carter muttered. "We've been working next to a legend for 5 years and didn't know it." Jackson approached with a cup of coffee and a gentle smile. "How are you holding up, Chen?" "Better than expected," Sophia admitted, "though I could do without the spectacle." Harrison emerged from his office looking haggard. "Sophia, I've had 27 calls this morning. 5 from Naval Intelligence, 9 from CIA division chiefs, and 13 from tactical units wanting to know if we're teaching your infiltration methods." "I'm sorry about the disruption." "Don't apologize," Harrison interrupted, his voice carrying genuine remorse. "I've been thinking all night about how we treated you, how I treated you. Making you run communication checks and equipment inventories when you could have been—" "Stop." Sophia's voice was firm, but kind. "I needed those 5 years. I needed to remember that there's dignity in all work, that my value as a person wasn't tied to my operational reputation. Serving here taught me that." Before Harrison could respond, the tactical center's door chimed. A woman in an impeccable naval uniform entered, her commander's insignia gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Sophia recognized her immediately. Commander Victoria Blackwell, Director of Naval Special Operations. "Commander Chen," Blackwell said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I've been trying to reach you." The tactical center fell silent. Even the officers in the corridor seemed to sense the importance of this moment. "Commander Blackwell," Sophia's voice was carefully neutral, "I wasn't expecting you." I flew out as soon as I heard the news. We need to talk. I'm on duty right now. This is more important than. Blackwell paused, looking around the tactical center with barely concealed disdain. This is more important than whatever you're doing here. The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. Sophia felt her teammates stiffen, their eyes fixed on this exchange between two very different worlds of military operations. My work is important, Sophia said quietly. All military service is important. Blackwell's expression softened slightly, as if she were dealing with a child having a tantrum. Of course it is, but you're brilliant, Sophia. You belong in operational planning and field leadership, not in some carrier's support unit. 5 years ago, Naval Intelligence told me I belonged in a disciplinary hearing facing charges of insubordination. Now suddenly I belong in operational leadership again. That was different. We were misled by Commander Hayes' reports. But now we know the truth. You knew the truth then, Sophia replied, her voice growing stronger. You just chose to believe the version that was more convenient for the chain of command. Blackwell's mask slipped, revealing the calculating officer beneath. Sophia, be reasonable. We're prepared to offer you full reinstatement, your previous rank plus promotion to commander, and complete autonomy over your tactical team. You'd have your own unit, unlimited operational authority, and a team of the best specialists in the service. And in exchange? In exchange, you come home where you belong. You stop this, whatever this is. Blackwell gestured around the tactical center dismissively. You resume your rightful place in the special operations community. Sophia looked around the center at Harrison, who had given her work when she was desperate. At Jackson, who had treated her with respect from day one. At Rodriguez and Carter, who were finally beginning to understand what they'd witnessed. At the familiar equipment and workstations that had been her companions through the darkest period of her life. This is my home, she said simply. These are my people. Blackwell's smile became strained. Sophia, I understand you're emotional about this situation. It's natural to feel some loyalty to the place that sheltered you. But let's be practical. What future do you have here? What operations can you plan? What innovations can you create? I can teach, Sophia said, the words coming to her as she spoke them. I can train the next generation of tactical specialists to think beyond conventional approaches. I can bridge the gap between theoretical planning and field execution. You want to waste your talents on military education? Blackwell's voice rose with incredulity. I want to use my talents to make a difference. Real difference, not just operational statistics. Blackwell's expression hardened. You're making a mistake, Sophia. The intelligence community has a long memory. If you turn down this opportunity, there might not be another one. Is that a threat? It's reality. The special operations world is smaller than you think. Reputation matters. Sophia felt a familiar chill, the same intimidation tactics that had been used against her 5 years ago. But this time, she wasn't alone. This time, she had people who believed in her worth beyond her ability to execute perfect infiltrations. My reputation is my own to build, Sophia said. And I choose to build it on integrity, not on bowing to institutional pressure. Jackson stepped forward, his voice steady. The lady said no. Maybe it's time you left. Blackwell looked at him with undisguised contempt. I wasn't speaking to you. You're in our tactical center, disrespecting our colleague, Jackson replied. That makes it my business. Rodriguez and Carter moved closer, their solidarity surprising even themselves. Harrison straightened behind the main console, his face resolute. I think, Harrison said quietly, you should leave, Commander Blackwell. Sophia's made her position clear. Blackwell's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. She wasn't accustomed to being dismissed by people she considered beneath her station. This is a mistake, Sophia. A career-ending mistake. Then it's my mistake to make, Sophia replied calmly. As Blackwell turned to leave, she paused at the door. The CIA offer won't last forever either. They want results, not sentiment. When you're ready to be realistic about your future, you know where to find me." The doors slid shut behind her, leaving the tactical center in stunned silence. Through the windows, they watched Blackwell stride past the gathered officers without comment, her posture rigid with fury. "Well," Rodriguez said finally, "that was something." "You okay?" Jackson asked Sophia, concern evident in his voice. Sophia looked around at the faces surrounding her, not colleagues, she realized, but friends. People who had stood up for her when it mattered, who had chosen loyalty over opportunity. "I'm perfect," she said, and for the first time in years, she meant it completely. The tactical center's communication system chimed again, jarring everyone back to reality. Harrison answered with a weary sigh. "Tactical operations, Captain Harrison speaking. Yes, she's here." "No, she's not giving interviews because she's working. That's why." As Harrison deflected another intelligence officer's call, Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from Agent Donovan. "Task force meeting scheduled for Monday, if you're interested." "No pressure, but the offer stands. Your choice entirely." Sophia stared at the message, weighing her options. The CIA task force represented everything she'd once dreamed of: prestigious work, unlimited operational authority, the chance to shape the future of intelligence gathering. It was the career she'd lost, offered back to her on a silver platter. But as she looked around the tactical center, she realized that her dreams had evolved. 5 years ago, success meant recognition, decorations, and cutting-edge operations. Now success meant something different entirely. "Jackson," she said suddenly, "how would you feel about advanced tactical training?" He looked puzzled. "What kind of training?" "Infiltration techniques, perimeter assessment, advanced security vulnerability identification. Part-time, while you maintain your regular duties. I could help you with the practical application." Jackson's eyes widened. "You think I could do that?" "I think you have natural instincts that can't be taught. The rest is just methodology and practice. We can handle that." "What about Rodriguez and Carter?" Jackson asked. "They've got experience too." Sophia looked at the two men who were listening with growing interest. "Anyone who wants to learn. We could start a specialized training program right here. Combine hands-on experience with theoretical tactical planning." Harrison hung up the comm system, his expression thoughtful. "You're talking about turning this center into some kind of special operations training facility." "I'm talking about creating something new. A place where theoretical planning meets practical application. Where people learn to think like ghost operatives while working like regular tactical specialists." "And you'd give up the CIA for this?" Harrison asked, incredulous. Sophia considered the question carefully. "The CIA has thousands of brilliant operatives. They'll complete their missions with or without me. But here I could make a difference that lasts generations." Her phone rang, another unfamiliar number. She answered reluctantly. "Commander Chen, this is Admiral Catherine Hayes, Joint Special Operations Command. I wanted to discuss the position we've offered." "Admiral Hayes, I'm honored by the offer, but before you decide, let me explain what we're proposing. We don't want you chained to a desk in the Pentagon. We need field trainers, people who can work with tactical teams and solve problems in real-world conditions. The position would involve training military specialists, developing field assessment protocols, and bridging the gap between complex intelligence and practical operations." Sophia felt her heart skip. This wasn't the administrative position she'd expected. This was something entirely different. "You'd be based wherever you think you can do the most good," Admiral Hayes continued. "If you want to work out of a carrier in the Pacific while developing training programs for naval specialists, that works for us. We need innovation, not bureaucracy." The offer hung in the air like a bridge between her old life and her new one. Sophia looked around the tactical center again. seeing possibilities she hadn't considered before. "Could I bring a team?" she asked. "Naval personnel who understand both the practical and theoretical sides. If they can pass security clearance, absolutely. We believe diverse teams produce better solutions." Sophia met Jackson's eyes, seeing excitement and hope there. She looked at Rodriguez and Carter, who were following the conversation with growing interest. Finally, she looked at Harrison, who was beginning to smile as he understood what she was considering. "Admiral Hayes," Sophia said slowly, "I think we might be able to work something out." 2 weeks later, the USS Nimitz's tactical operations center had transformed into something unprecedented in naval history. Joint Special Operations Command engineers had arrived to assess the facility's potential as a training center, while intelligence officers continued to document Sophia's unconventional choice to remain in carrier operations rather than return to Langley. The most dramatic change was Jackson's enrollment in an accelerated tactical operations program. Sophia had spent countless hours helping him navigate security systems and infiltration protocols, watching his natural tactical intuition flourish when supported by theoretical knowledge. His progress astonished even the JSOC instructors who reviewed his work. "I never thought I was smart enough for this," Jackson confided during one of their late-night training sessions. "Intelligence isn't about what you thought you couldn't do," Sophia replied. "It's about what you discover you can do when someone believes in you." Rodriguez and Carter had also signed up for the program, though their progress was slower. Rodriguez struggled with theoretical models but excelled at adaptive thinking in the field. Carter had an intuitive grasp of electronic countermeasures. That impressed Sophia's CIA contacts. Both men approached their training with the determination of people who had been given a second chance at dreams they'd never dared to pursue. The transformation wasn't limited to education. Word of Sophia's expertise had spread throughout the special operations community, bringing a steady stream of complex tactical problems to the carrier. Operations planners arrived from bases across the Pacific, their challenges ranging from simple infiltration planning to sophisticated vulnerability assessments that would have stumped most military specialists. Lieutenant Wells had become a regular visitor, bringing increasingly complex scenarios and spreading word about the tactical center's capabilities among his SEAL contacts. His initial skepticism had evolved into genuine respect, and he often stayed to observe Sophia's training methods. "I've never seen anyone approach tactical problems the way you do," he told her one afternoon while watching her work with Jackson on a compound infiltration simulation. "You think 3 steps ahead of the problem." "Tactical planning is just applied psychology," Sophia replied, adjusting a security parameter with precision. "The secret is understanding that every defense has multiple vulnerabilities. You just have to find the elegant one." But not everyone in the carrier group welcomed the changes. Some longtime officers resented the influx of special operations personnel and intelligence attention. Others questioned whether Sophia's presence was good for the ship's traditional operational tempo. The tension came to a head during a command staff meeting where several senior officers voiced their concerns. "This used to be a disciplined carrier," complained Commander Henderson, who oversaw flight operations. "Now we've got spooks and special operators everywhere. It's disrupting our standard protocols." "It's also bringing advanced training to our personnel," countered Executive Officer Wilson. "Our tactical readiness scores are at an all-time high, and our specialists are being recruited for joint operations like never before." "Readiness isn't everything," Henderson shot back. "Some of us value chain of command over innovation." Sophia had attended the meeting at Captain Harrison's request, though she'd tried to avoid the spotlight. When called upon to address the concern, she stood slowly, feeling the weight of dozens of senior officers' gazes. "I understand the disruption my presence has caused," she began. "That was never my intention. I came here 5 years ago looking For anonymity, and I found something much more valuable. I found a community that accepted me without knowing my background. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The attention will die down eventually. Intelligence agencies will move on to other priorities, and JSOC will establish its training protocols. But what we're building here, the combination of practical skills and theoretical knowledge that will last, what exactly are you building? Asked Commander Bradley, the Air Wing commander. Opportunity, Sophia replied. Jackson will graduate next month with advanced tactical certification while maintaining his regular duties and supporting his team. Rodriguez is discovering talents he never knew he had. Carter is learning that intelligence comes in many forms. She looked around the room, making eye contact with skeptics and supporters alike. 5 years ago, I thought my career was over. This carrier group gave me a chance to rebuild my life. Now I want to give others the same opportunity, the chance to discover what they're capable of when someone believes in them. An elderly officer in the back row raised his hand. What happens when JSOC gets tired of this experiment? What happens to all these fancy programs when you move on to bigger things? The question struck at Sophia's deepest fears. She had built her new life around stability and community, but her growing responsibilities threatened to pull her back into the world of intelligence politics and competing priorities. That's why we're building something sustainable, she said. The training program will continue with or without me. The tactical protocols we're developing will become standard procedure, and the people we're educating will carry this knowledge forward long after I'm gone. After the meeting, Sophia walked through the carrier's main corridor, reflecting on how much had changed since that first encounter with Lieutenant Wells. The ship still maintained its military discipline, but it now hummed with new energy and purpose. Her phone buzzed with a message from Director Blackwood, her former lawyer. Hayes sentenced to 15 years in military prison. Naval Intelligence Restructuring Tactical Division. Your vindication is complete. Sophia stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. The vindication felt hollow compared to the satisfaction of watching Jackson master infiltration techniques or seeing Rodriguez's confidence grow as he tackled increasingly complex security assessments. At the tactical center, she found Admiral Hayes reviewing the latest training protocols with Harrison and several JSOC officials. The conversation stopped when she entered. Commander Chen, Admiral Hayes said, we were just discussing the next phase of expansion. The success here has exceeded all expectations. What kind of expansion? Sophia asked cautiously. We want to replicate this model at other installations. Military intelligence partnerships that combine practical training with advanced tactical education. You'd oversee the entire program. Sophia felt the familiar pull of larger responsibilities. Bigger challenges, greater impact. It was exactly the kind of opportunity she had dreamed of 5 years ago. That sounds impressive, she said carefully. But I've made commitments here to the people I'm training, to this carrier group. Of course, Admiral Hayes agreed. We're not asking you to abandon what you've built. We want you to expand it. Think of it as taking your successful model fleet-wide. The offer was tempting, but Sophia had learned to be wary of opportunities that demanded everything while promising even more. She'd built her new life on the principle that success meant more than operational achievement. It meant having roots, maintaining relationships, and making a difference in individual lives. I need time to consider this, she said finally, naturally. But Sophia, may I call you Sophia? What you've accomplished here is remarkable. The combination of practical skills and theoretical knowledge, the integration of intelligence and military training, the focus on individual development within a team framework. It's revolutionary. As the JSOC officials left, Sophia remained in the tactical center, surrounded by the familiar sounds and sights that had defined her life for 5 years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new decisions about the direction of her life. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, in a carrier tactical center where talent was nurtured, dignity was respected, and careers were rebuilt one person at a time. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Jackson. Just passed my advanced infiltration assessment with perfect marks. Thanks for believing in me, Commander. Sophia smiled, tucking the phone away. Some victories were measured in successful operations and intelligence gathered. Others were measured in transformed lives and realized potential. She was beginning to understand which kind mattered more. 3 months later, the Tactical Center had become something entirely unique in the U.S. military landscape, a hybrid facility where cutting-edge intelligence techniques met conventional naval operations, where theoretical knowledge was tempered by practical wisdom, and where second chances bloomed into extraordinary achievements. Jackson had completed his tactical certification with honors and was now enrolled in a full JSOC specialist program while working as Sophia's lead instructor. Rodriguez had discovered a gift for electronic countermeasures that impressed even veteran CIA operatives. Carter had overcome his resistance to theoretical models to become an expert in security vulnerability assessment. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. But success, Sophia had learned, often attracted the wrong kind of attention. The challenge came from an unexpected source, Senator William Morgan, whose oversight committee included military special operations. Morgan had built his political career on opposing what he called shadow government and unaccountable intelligence operations. The JSOC partnership with a conventional carrier struck him as a perfect target for his next televised hearing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morgan announced during a press conference on the steps of the Capitol, "we have a situation where the Joint Special Operations Command is spending tens of millions of taxpayer dollars to subsidize what amounts to a private fiefdom. This is intelligence overreach disguised as military readiness." Sophia watched the news coverage from the Tactical Center's break room, her stomach knotting with familiar anxiety. She'd faced political opposition before, during the Kandahar hearings, and she knew how quickly public opinion could shift. "This is different," Harrison assured her, though his voice carried uncertainty. "People in the military community know you. They've seen what you've accomplished." "Politicians are skilled at making reality irrelevant," Sophia replied, remembering how Commander Hayes had twisted her reputation 5 years earlier. "If Morgan wants to make this about government overreach instead of training and innovation, he might succeed." Her fears proved justified. Within days, Morgan's supporters were questioning every aspect of the program. Military oversight committees received anonymous tips about excessive spending on unproven training methods. Social media campaigns portrayed Sophia as a rogue operative living on taxpayer funds. The attacks culminated in a Senate hearing where Morgan demanded accountability for the program's costs and effectiveness. Sophia knew this was her moment of truth, the chance to defend not just her work, but the dreams of everyone who had believed in the program's mission. This would be Sophia's greatest test, yet not of her tactical skills, but of her ability to stand up for what she'd built and the people who had trusted her vision. The Senate hearing room was packed beyond capacity. Intelligence officials filled the front rows, their expressions carefully neutral. Behind them, Sophia could see the faces of people whose lives had been touched by the program: Jackson and his fiancée Maria, Rodriguez with his teenage son, Carter accompanied by his elderly mother, Harrison, and his senior staff. Senator Morgan opened with his standard talking points about accountability and government overreach. His questions were designed to embarrass rather than illuminate, focusing on costs while ignoring benefits. "Commander Chen," he said with theatrical concern, "can you justify spending $12.4 million of taxpayer money to train a handful of naval personnel in tactics they'll likely never use, when that same money could fund veterans' health care or military family housing?" Sophia had prepared for this question, but seeing Morgan's smug expression triggered memories of similar interrogations during the Kandahar hearings. For a moment, she felt the familiar urge to retreat, to apologize for taking up space and resources. Then she looked past Morgan to see Jackson in the audience, wearing the JSOC tactical insignia he'd earned after his rapid promotion to senior specialist. Beside him sat Rodriguez, whose electronic countermeasure innovations had been adopted by 3 military branches. Carter was there too, holding a commendation from the Secretary of Defense. "Senator Morgan," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment, "I can justify every dollar. But more importantly, I can prove that those dollars have produced something invaluable people who are prepared to serve their country with both skill and integrity." "Pretty words," Morgan replied dismissively. "But what tangible results can you show? What measurable return on investment?" Sophia stood, her movement drawing every eye in the hearing room. She had learned over 5 years of hiding and 3 months of rebuilding that some moments demanded presence rather than words. "Petty Officer Jackson," she called out. "Would you stand, please?" Jackson rose from his seat, his tactical specialist insignia catching the light. 3 months ago, Jackson was running routine communications checks and inventory management. Today, he's designing infiltration protocols for high-risk extraction operations. Last week, his innovations saved the lives of 6 hostages in an operation I'm not at liberty to discuss in this forum. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Morgan's expression tightened. "Specialist Rodriguez, please stand." Rodriguez rose awkwardly, still uncomfortable with public attention. Rodriguez spent 15 years believing he wasn't qualified for anything beyond equipment maintenance. Last month, he identified a critical flaw in enemy surveillance systems that could have compromised multiple operations in 3 theaters. His countermeasure protocol is now being taught at the Joint Special Operations Training Center. More murmurs, louder now. Morgan tried to interrupt, but Sophia continued. "Chief Petty Officer Carter, please stand." Carter stood with quiet dignity, his mother beaming beside him. Carter discovered he had severe dyslexia, which explained his struggles with traditional tactical training. When we adapted our teaching methods to his learning style, he revealed an extraordinary ability to understand complex security systems. He's now developing vulnerability assessment protocols that will be used in every special operation conducted in the next decade. The hearing room had fallen completely silent, except for the clicking of camera shutters. "Senator Morgan asked for measurable returns on investment," Sophia continued, her voice growing stronger. "Here's what $12.4 million has produced. 3 men who went from routine naval duties to designing the future of military tactical operations. Security innovations that will save countless lives. Training protocols that will be implemented worldwide." She paused, looking directly at Morgan. "Most importantly, proof that talent exists everywhere if we're willing to invest in developing it." She gestured towards the audience where dozens of military personnel had gathered to support the program. "Look around this room, Senator. These are the faces of America's hidden potential. These are the people who will solve tomorrow's threats if we give them today's opportunities. Every dollar invested in their training returns tenfold in innovation, service, and national security." The silence stretched as Morgan seemed to struggle for a response. Finally, he managed, "That's very inspiring, Commander Chen, but inspiration doesn't justify taxpayer expenditure, doesn't it?" Sophia asked quietly. "When inspiration produces innovation that saves lives, when it transforms routine personnel into highly skilled operators, when it proves that America's greatest resource isn't our technology or our weaponry, it's our people." She walked closer to Morgan's table, her presence commanding the room's attention. "You want to know about waste, Senator? Waste is having brilliant minds running equipment checks for 20 years because nobody recognized their potential. Waste is losing operations because our personnel aren't prepared, and we don't have enough skilled specialists to execute properly. Waste is building walls between conventional forces and special operations instead of bridges that make us all stronger. Sophia returned to her seat, but her voice carried clearly through the silent hearing room. This program doesn't waste taxpayer money, it multiplies it. Every dollar invested here produces specialists, innovations, and capabilities that didn't exist before. More importantly, it produces service members who understand that their value isn't determined by their starting point, but by their willingness to grow. The hearing continued for another hour, but the tone had shifted completely. Morgan's questions became increasingly defensive while Sophia's supporters provided testimony about the program's impact. Military officials presented data showing operational improvements and casualty reductions. Special operations commanders spoke about increased mission success rates and improved inter-service coordination. When the hearing concluded, Sophia felt cautiously optimistic. She had defended her work honestly and thoroughly, but political decisions weren't always based on facts or logic. That evening, as she cleaned up the tactical center after another busy day, her phone rang with a call from Admiral Hayes. "Sophia, I wanted you to hear this directly from me. Senator Morgan just announced that he's withdrawing his opposition to the program. More than that, he's requesting additional funding to expand it to other commands." Sophia sank into a chair, overwhelmed by relief and exhaustion. What changed his mind? According to his staff, he spent the afternoon talking to Jackson, Rodriguez, and Carter. Apparently, hearing their stories directly, not filtered through political rhetoric, made him understand what you've actually accomplished here. As Sophia ended the call, she looked around the tactical center that had become so much more than a workplace. It was a symbol of second chances, a proving ground for hidden potential, and a bridge between worlds that had once seemed incompatible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, and new opportunities to prove that talent could flourish anywhere if given the right support. But tonight, she was content to savor a victory that had been won not through political maneuvering or intelligence manipulation, but through the simple power of transformed lives and realized dreams. The final test hadn't been about defending a program. It had been about defending the belief that everyone deserved a chance to discover what they were capable of achieving. And that belief, Sophia now knew, was worth fighting for. The ultimate challenge, however, was yet to come. 2 weeks after the Senate hearing, Sophia received a priority message that sent shockwaves through the tactical center. Intelligence reports indicated a Russian research vessel had gone dark in the Bering Sea. Satellite imagery suggested the ship had been boarded, with all communication systems disabled. On board were 15 American and British scientists along with classified research on advanced sonar systems. Initial assessment: hostage situation with high-value intelligence targets. The urgency was compounded by a brewing storm system that would make rescue operations impossible within 36 hours. A SEAL team was being deployed, but they needed tactical expertise for a complex infiltration under deteriorating weather conditions. "They're requesting you specifically," Harrison told Sophia, his face grave. "Not as a trainer or consultant. They want you to lead the infiltration planning and execute on site." Sophia felt a familiar surge of adrenaline mixed with dread. This wasn't a training exercise or a theoretical scenario. This was precisely the kind of high-stakes operation she'd avoided for 5 years. "Why me?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Because you wrote the book on hostile maritime infiltration under adverse conditions," Harrison replied. "Because you've done this before and succeeded when others failed." 4 hours later, Sophia found herself aboard a C-130 transport plane headed toward the Aleutian Islands, where she would rendezvous with the SEAL team. Beside her sat Jackson, Rodriguez, and Carter, her team, the ones she had trained, now facing their first live operation together. "You didn't have to volunteer," she told them as the plane shuddered through turbulence. "This isn't what you signed up for." "Actually it is," Jackson replied quietly. "You taught us that theoretical knowledge means nothing if you're not willing to apply it when it matters." "Besides," Rodriguez added with a nervous smile, "someone needs to make sure you don't get rusty out there, Commander." Carter nodded in agreement. "We're a team now. Where you go, we go." The sentiment warmed her, but it also heightened her sense of responsibility. These weren't hardened intelligence operatives accustomed to life-or-death decisions. They were naval personnel who had shown aptitude for tactical operations, but had never faced the brutal reality of a hostile infiltration. When they landed at the forward operating base on Shemya Island, the situation had deteriorated further. Weather forecasts predicted the storm would hit 6 hours earlier than initially expected, giving them a narrower window for extraction. Worse, satellite imagery now showed armed guards patrolling the research vessel's decks, professionals with military precision. Lieutenant Wells met them on the tarmac, his face grim beneath his tactical hood. "Commander Chen," he said, foregoing formalities, "glad you're here. We've got a situation that's gone from bad to worse." He led them to a makeshift command center where the full SEAL team awaited. Some of the operators Sophia recognized from her first encounter on the carrier, the same men who had mocked her pink gear and questioned her abilities. "Gentlemen," Wells announced, "Commander Chen and her team will be handling the infiltration planning and tactical execution. I expect full cooperation." Sophia noted the skeptical glances exchanged among some team members, particularly Rodriguez, the SEAL who had been most vocal in dismissing her expertise months earlier. "With all due respect, Lieutenant," Rodriguez said, "we're talking about a high-risk operation in deteriorating conditions. Is this really the time to be field testing your diversity initiative?" The room fell silent. Wells opened his mouth to respond, but Sophia raised her hand. "That's a fair question," she said calmly. "You're putting your lives on the line. You deserve to know who's planning your approach." She moved to the tactical display, bringing up the satellite imagery of the research vessel. "The hostiles on board have established a standard interlocking patrol pattern with 30-second coverage gaps on the starboard side. They're using Russian Kavkaz tactical protocols, 4-man units with overlapping fields of fire." She zoomed in on the vessel's superstructure. "They've disabled the standard communications array, but they've missed the secondary system here." She pointed to a barely visible antenna. "That tells me two things. They're professionals, but they're not Russian naval intelligence. Likely private military contractors, probably Volkov Group based on their movement patterns." The skeptical whispers ceased as she continued her assessment, identifying security vulnerabilities, patrol timing weaknesses, and optimal insertion points with a precision that could only come from deep expertise. "Most importantly," she concluded, "they've positioned their hostages here, in the main laboratory, believing the single access point makes it defensible. What they don't know is that these research vessels have maintenance tunnels that run beneath the lab floor, accessible through the engine compartment. That's our way in." Rodriguez, the SEAL tactical specialist, stared at her with newfound respect. "How could you possibly know that about the ship's architecture?" "Because I ran an extraction from the same vessel class in 2015, Sophia replied. "Simply, Operation Black Tide. The schematics haven't changed." The tension in the room shifted, skepticism giving way to cautious respect. Wells nodded approvingly. "Now that we've established Commander Chen's qualifications, let's focus on planning this infiltration. We have approximately 10 hours before that storm makes this operation impossible." The next 8 hours were a blur of detailed planning, equipment preparation, and rehearsals. Sophia worked seamlessly with the SEAL team, her tactical experience complementing their operational capabilities. Jackson proved invaluable in communications planning, while Rodriguez's electronic countermeasure Expertise would be critical for disabling the ship's remaining security systems. Carter's vulnerability assessment helped identify the optimal timing for the approach. Throughout the preparation, Sophia noticed her team's pink accented gear, drawing curious glances, but no longer outright mockery. Professional respect had replaced personal judgment. As they prepared for final deployment, Wells approached Sophia privately. "You know you don't have to go in with the team," he said quietly. "You've done the planning. You could coordinate from here." Sophia checked her tactical harness, adjusting the pink-trimmed equipment that had become her signature. "My team is going in. I go where they go." Wells nodded, understanding. "Just like Operation Kingfisher." Sophia froze. "How do you know?" "About that? I was on the support team," Wells replied. "I saw what happened when Hayes overruled your assessment. I saw the aftermath. That's why I requested you specifically for this operation. Because you were right then, and we didn't listen." Before she could respond, the mission controller announced their departure time. The infiltration team moved toward the waiting helicopters, their faces now hidden behind tactical masks and night vision equipment. As they boarded, Sophia felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Rodriguez, the SEAL who had first mocked her pink knife months earlier. "That gear," he said, gesturing to her custom equipment. "It's not standard issue." "No," she replied, expecting another criticism. "It's not." "Good," he said simply, "because this isn't a standard operation. We need every edge we can get." The helicopters lifted off into the darkening sky, heading toward the storm front and the Russian vessel. Beyond, Sophia felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders, not just for the mission's success, but for the lives of everyone on board, including the team she had trained from scratch. As they approached the drop zone, Sophia activated her tactical comm system. "All units, this is Ghost 6, she said, reclaiming her old call sign for the first time in 5 years. "Final checks, remember your training, trust your team. We go in together, we come out together." Jackson's voice came through the comm, steady and professional. "Tactical systems green." Rodriguez followed, countermeasures ready. Carter completed the check, security assessment confirmed. Optimal window in 90 seconds. As the helicopter hovered near the research vessel, now barely visible through the advancing storm, Sophia felt a moment of clarity. 5 years ago, she had been broken by betrayal and politics. She had hidden her talents, buried her identity, and accepted a diminished version of herself. Now she was leading a critical mission, not despite her differences, but because of them. Her unique approach, her custom equipment, her unconventional team, these weren't liabilities but strengths. "Ghost Team, execute infiltration," she commanded, and together they descended into the darkness, facing their impossible mission. The storm winds howled around them as they rappelled onto the pitching deck of the research vessel. Waves crashed over the railings, making the surface treacherously slick. This was the moment where theory met reality, where training faced its ultimate test. Sophia landed first, immediately taking cover behind a ventilation housing. Her team followed with precision, moving exactly as they had rehearsed. The SEAL operators descended last, spreading out to establish a security perimeter. Through her night vision goggles, Sophia spotted the first patrol, 2 armed men moving with military discipline despite the deteriorating weather. She signaled to Jackson, who activated the countermeasure Rodriguez had designed. The patrol's radio crackled with static, forcing them to move toward the bow to restore communications, exactly as planned. "Approach clear," Sophia whispered into her comm. Moving to Phase 2. The team advanced toward the engine compartment access hatch, with Carter in the lead, applying his security bypass technique. The hatch opened silently, allowing them to slip inside one by one. The engine room was hot and loud, providing perfect cover for their movement. Sophia led them through the labyrinth of machinery toward the maintenance tunnel entrance, a small access panel that didn't appear on standard schematics. "I don't see it," Rodriguez whispered, doubt creeping into his voice. "Are you sure it's here?" Sophia moved confidently to a seemingly solid bulkhead, running her gloved hand along the seam. "It's designed not to be seen," she explained, pressing a hidden release. The panel slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel. "How did you know that?" "Was there?" one of the SEAL operators asked. "Because I've been here before," Sophia replied simply. "Different mission, same ship design." They crawled through the claustrophobic space, the ship's violent pitching in the growing storm making progress difficult. Above them, they could hear footsteps and voices, armed guards moving hostages. When they reached the access point beneath the laboratory, Sophia held up her hand, signaling everyone to stop. She pressed her tactical headset against the floor panel, listening intently. 4 hostiles, she whispered. 15 hostages. Guards are getting nervous about the storm. They're planning to move everyone to the lower deck. That complicates. Extraction, Wells responded. We need to move now. Sophia made a split-second decision. Change of plan. Jackson, Rodriguez, Carter deploy countermeasure Delta. Her team exchanged glances but moved immediately to execute. This was a protocol they had developed during training but never tested in the field, a synchronized electronic, acoustic, and visual distraction designed to create maximum disorientation, with minimal risk to hostages. SEAL team, prepare for breach on my mark, Sophia continued. Hostage protection is priority 1. She counted down silently, then nodded to Rodriguez, who activated the device. Above them, chaos erupted. Lights flickered and died. Communication systems emitted painful feedback. Disorientation, gas harmless but effective, hissed through the ventilation system they had accessed. Breach now, Sophia commanded, pushing up through the floor panel. What followed was 20 seconds of precision violence. The SEAL team moved with lethal efficiency, neutralizing the disoriented guards before they could harm the hostages. Sophia's team secured the scientists, beginning immediate medical assessment and preparation for extraction. All hostiles down, Wells reported. Hostages secure. Outside, the storm had intensified dramatically. The extraction helicopters reported severely degraded conditions, with a narrow window for pickup. We need to move, Sophia ordered. Primary extraction route is compromised by storm surge. We'll use Emergency Protocol 7. This meant moving the hostages to the highest point of the vessel, the radar platform, for a high-risk helicopter extraction under extreme weather conditions. It was the only option remaining. As they guided the frightened scientists through the heaving ship, one of the SEAL operators slipped on the wave-washed deck, crashing hard against a railing. His tactical harness essential for the helicopter. Extraction was damaged beyond field repair. Sophia assessed the situation instantly. Take mine, she said, already unfastening her custom pink-trimmed harness. Commander, that leaves you without, the operator began. I'll use the emergency cable system, she interrupted. I've done it before. What she didn't add was that the emergency system was significantly more dangerous, especially in these conditions. It would leave her the last to extract, with the least secure connection to the helicopter. They reached the radar platform as the first extraction helicopter approached, fighting against wind gusts approaching 70 knots. The pilot's voice crackled over the comm. 1 pass only. Make it count. The extraction proceeded with practiced efficiency. Hostages and operators ascending into the hovering helicopter despite the violent conditions. Jackson, Rodriguez, and Carter went last among the main group, each giving Sophia a concerned look as they ascended. We're coming back. For you, Jackson promised over the comm. The helicopter pulled away, immediately replaced by the second extraction aircraft. Sophia connected the emergency cable to her tactical belta, Minimal connection that would leave her dangling beneath the helicopter during extraction, fully exposed to the elements. As she prepared to signal the pilot, a massive wave crashed over the ship, knocking her off balance. She slid across the platform, barely catching herself at the edge. The emergency cable slipped from her grasp, whipping in the violent wind just out of reach. Through the storm, she heard the helicopter pilot. 30 seconds fuel reserve, then we must abort. Sophia assessed her options with cold precision. The cable was retrievable, but only with a dangerous leap across the rain-slick platform. The alternative was being left behind on a vessel now taking on water in a Category 3 storm. She thought of her team, of what she had taught them about courage and calculated risk. About how true leadership means making the difficult choices when others cannot. Sophia took 3 quick steps and launched herself across the gap, pink gear gleaming briefly in the helicopter's searchlight. Her fingers closed around the cable as another wave crashed over the platform, threatening to sweep her into the churning sea. With a strength born of desperation and training, she secured the cable to her belt and signaled the pilot. The helicopter immediately began to ascend, leaving her dangling beneath it, buffeted by hurricane-force winds and rain that felt like needles against her exposed skin. She had trained for this scenario but never executed it in such extreme conditions. Every muscle screamed as she fought to maintain position, the wind threatening to send her spinning into the helicopter's tail rotor. Through sheer will and technique, Sophia maintained control during the harrowing 3-minute flight to the extraction vessel. As she was finally pulled aboard, soaked and exhausted, she found her team waiting, their faces reflecting both relief and newfound respect. "That," Jackson said simply, "was the most incredible thing I've ever seen." Rodriguez, the electronic countermeasures specialist who had once doubted her abilities, approached with something in his hand, a tactical knife with a pink handle. "I had this made after we started training with you," he admitted. "Thought it might bring some of your luck." Carter said nothing, but his expression conveyed everything: pride, respect, and the unspoken bond of a team that had faced death together and emerged victorious. Lieutenant Wells approached, extending his hand. "Ghost 6, he said formally. "Mission accomplished. All hostages secure, all team members accounted for." As the medical team checked her for injuries, Sophia caught sight of her reflection in a window. Her custom pink-trimmed tactical gear was battered but intact like her spirit, tested but unbroken. 5 years ago, she had hidden from her true identity, believing that conformity was the price of acceptance. Today, she had led a successful, high-risk extraction by embracing precisely what made her different. The impossible mission wasn't just about saving hostages. It was about proving that courage comes in all colors, even pink. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.